Section 6, the master list. So earlier we introduced you to all the different types of products. Well, the master list is the name we give to the database of all the different vessels that we count. At the time of writing it says 8,000. Actually these days I think we're up to like 11,500 products. But just bear in mind that this is very important. It's a lot of time and energy and effort has gone into the master list. We never purchased this. Actually, initially we purchased some software that had a master list into it, but it only had a few thousand names. And so basically we've developed a system so that whenever you scan a barcode when you're counting, it will look up from this complete list of 11,000 items. But bear in mind that each one of those items was individually entered when someone went to a bar, they scanned the barcode and it wasn't already in the system. So they've been entered one at a time. Normally when you go to a new bar you have a handful to enter, sometimes a crazy amount. But just the logical conclusion of that is we need to be careful about how we're entering new information into the master list, because it's something that, a very important resource we all use. We're all going to enter products into it, but it's important that you understand the integrity of the master list is critical to things working correctly, and so we need to pay attention and be mindful about how we're doing things. A common mistake, as mentioned here, is that a vessel is already in the system and you would re-enter it. Most obviously you scan a barcode and you see that that product wasn't recognized, and so you think, oh, I have to add this into the system. But there's another significant possibility, which is that product is already in the system, we don't have the barcode for it, and or the barcode has changed. So before you enter new products, first of all it's important to check by searching from different combinations of the name that the product isn't already in the system. Okay, so some other little sub-bullets. Default sizes. We went over this in the previous section, but this is important. If a particular vessel is the default size for its category, the vessel name will not be included, or would not include the size, I'm sorry. For any vessel which is not the default size, so if it's not a half barrel 15.5 gallon keg, if it's not a 12-ounce bottle of beer, if it's not a 1 litre liquor bottle, or it's not a 750 milliliter bottle of wine, then the name must include the size, and if it's a can or a box of wine, it must also include can or box. Very important, said, we're going to get confused if we don't stick to these rules and conventions, so be aware, and if you don't understand that, let's have a specific conversation about it. Another important one is naming conventions. Again, something we touched on. We talked about how Cabernet Sauvignon is reduced to CS and Pinot Noir is reduced to PN, etc., and Chardonnay to Chard. I didn't give an exhaustive list here, and so if in doubt, go and look for similar products. So if you find one I came across recently was a Overproof Rum. So it was you're probably familiar with Bacardi 151. That's the percentage proof is 151, which means that it's 75.5 alcohol by volume. But we use the word OP for overproof. And I was able to find another example of that. But just an example, if you come across a characteristic of a product that you haven't seen before, go and try and find it in the relevant subcategory. And if you thought, oh, I'll call it OP for overproof, chances are there's already one that's called overproof or OP in there. So it'd be a great idea to go and look for the words OP or overproof and see how we're handling that already. Maybe you'll realize that we haven't actually developed a naming convention for that. But again, just the point is, take a bit of time to look at the existing master list before you enter new products in, so you can try and follow conventions when possible. Again, we've talked about this. Again, we'll talk about it in more detail, but vessel and product IDs. So in a previous section, I talked about the difference between vessels, which are specific sizes, and products, which are the overall sort of product, like Jack Daniels. Each of these have a unique identifier. So to stick with that Jack Daniels example, we've got 3 different size vessels of Jack Daniels, and they'll all have a unique vessel ID indicating the specific size. But those 3 vessels all share the same product. They've all got Jack Daniels in them, and that will have a dedicated product ID. In that case, they'll have 3 different vessel IDs, but all 3 vessels will have the same product ID. Confused? Hopefully not. So the the vessel and product IDs in nerd talk, if you were talking about database science, you'd call them keys, which are the unique identifiers. And whenever we look up and the software needs to look up a product, it uses the number rather than the name, because the name might miss out a space or be capitalized or not, etc. So the key just makes it very easy to confirm that we're talking about the right item. So we have a unique key for our vessels, which is the vessel ID, and a unique key for our product, which is the product ID. Note and pay attention here is that the product IDs are in the range of 1 through 20,000. So if its number is between 1 and 20,000, it's definitely a product ID you're looking at. Conversely, if the number is 50,000 or higher, it's definitely a vessel ID. The reason we don't overlap these is just to reduce the possibility of confusing them. But be aware, because you write recipes at the product level, you're going to deal a lot more with the product IDs, but just be aware there also are vessel IDs that are unique. Mention it as well, but copy from existing items. So if you scan a product that's not in the barcode, or maybe it doesn't have a barcode, like we said, the first thing to do is to go and check, do a manual search, and try and use a couple of different word combinations. Like for instance, if it's Coors Light, you might type Coors Light, and then you might look CL, or not a great example, but you get the point. Is for instance, Fort Collins Brewing is FCB. So you need to look for Fort Collins and FCB, because it'd be a sort of a sensible abbreviation. So what you want to do is, if you have to enter a new item, go and find a similar item. So go and find an item that belongs to the same subcategory, like rum, and is a similar size, and then you go and copy that existing item, and then just change the name and the barcodes and the specific items. Doing that just saves you having to enter all the specifics, like the code that identifies its rum. If you steal an existing rum and then just replace the name, that will be quicker. Again, we'll have more on that later.